Alright, to start your Greek project, the first thing you'll need to do is go into Google and find some images of some ancient Greek pottery that you want to imitate but add a modern twist to. So my wife is going to be doing the carving in this video, and I wanted her to use dogs and goats and chickens, the animals that we have at home, to make a modern day war scene on our pot, but using the animals that are in our backyard. Kind of a silly parody of like a Greek war scene. So these are the images I gave her, and then she's going to use those images to draw a little sketch, and then sketch that onto the pot, and then carve it. Enjoy watching someone who's better than me at carving. Alright, so in this video, my wife is actually going to be doing the carving. She's just better at it than I am and can do it faster. So the first thing she did was she sketched out, you can see this little drawing in the bottom left-hand corner, what she wanted the images to be. She chose to do some carvings of the animals we have at home. So we have goats and chickens and dogs. So I think now we have 13 chickens and 2 goats and 2 dogs. So she decided to do a scene, like a war scene, that was based on some Roman designs. And she decided to have like the animals fighting each other. So that's kind of the contemporary part of it, is it's our modern day backyard animals fighting each other in like a Greek war scene. So what she's doing now is she's kind of just mapping out where she wants each thing. She's going to be doing all of the line drawings. You can see the line drawings she has there. She's basically just going to be drawing that with a pen tool very lightly through the black slip. So as she draws through the black slip, she's going to rotate the pot and draw that her entire scene in that middle register of black slip. If you mess up with the pen tool, you can just kind of rub it with your finger and it goes away. So it's kind of like drawing and your finger is the eraser if the pen tool is the pencil. So she's drawing her line drawing. You could print out images to kind of copy. If you really wanted to, you could lay the piece of paper over the pot and kind of lightly trace with a pencil over your writing, and that would leave a slight imprint on the pot. It might be slightly distorted because your pot might have a curve to it, but she's deciding to freehand it. Alright, so now that she's done with the line drawing, she's going to be using her small loop tool, maybe a little carving tool. Anything really works to scrape away, but she's going to be basically everything she's outlined. She's going to be carving the inside of that away. The goal is to carve as little bit of the clay as possible. You just want to carve the black slip away to reveal the original color of the clay without making too much of an indentation. When Greek pottery was carved, this is called the sgraffito technique, which means to scratch away. So she's scratching away the black clay to reveal those characters. So this process is going to be basically just kind of like if you imagine if you've ever used like a lottery ticket where you scratch away the surface to reveal what's underneath. You're going to be doing that all the way around the pot. When she's doing this, you'll want to clear the tool out occasionally if your slip is a little wet, as you saw her just do there. Because if it bunches up, sometimes you'll drag the black slip over the areas you've already carved. You can see the pot is resting on a piece of foam. You can put a pillow underneath it or something so that you can lay it flat on the table without denting the other side or smudging it. So a pillow, you can put a plastic bag over it so it doesn't get any clay on the pillow or anything. You're also going to notice as she's doing this, little crumbs are kind of falling down off the pot, and she's blowing those away. Just make sure that if you're doing this, a great place to do this would be like outside. Put a pillow in your lap and put the pot on your legs and do this, and then just blow it off into some grass or on the concrete or something. I wouldn't recommend doing this over carpet because you're going to make a bunch of little clay scraps that'll get, in the carpet, and who knows how happy your parents would be with that. So if you continue watching her carve, you're going to notice that her carving is going kind of slow. She wants to be very precise. You want to stay in those lines. Again, if you lightly carve something you didn't want to carve, you can just erase that carving by putting some slip on it. You'll need to let it dry though for probably about a full hour. You'll see that she's switching to a pen tool. You can do some fine lines with the pen tool. Really anything works. If you see to the left of her pot, there are some other tools there, an X-Acto knife, a little loop tool. Any little piece of metal would work. Sometimes you might want a pointed piece of metal, the end of like a knife, or something that is small enough to do some fine details. But most of it can be done with your regular loop tool. The straight side she's using right there has corners to it. So if you have a corner to the tool from like the little rectangle side and the circle side, it is a little bit easier to carve straight lines with the point of that tool. So if you'd like to keep watching this section, it's going to speed through her carving most of it, and this commentary will pick up after that. All right, this is a little repetitive, so I sped it up, but you can see to do the banding on that brown part, she just drew some really simple lines with the pin tool, and then did some wavy lines with the pin tool, did some bordering so she knew where she wanted those things to be. And then she's going to be using the loop tool to make some wavy lines after she traces them with the pen tool. And then she's just going to carve those lines. And you can see it's a really simple pattern that just kind of borders the outside. You can pick any pattern that you'd like. It's nice to have that upper and lower register just because it makes it a little more interesting. Now what she's doing afterwards is just carving out a large area so it looks almost like water or waves, which is totally fine. You just want to make sure that you're not just carving a center area, that you give a little bit of decoration or detail to it. So now we're moving on to the next step. These squirt bottles are in the gray cabinet. You can fill them with the colored slip. She's now going back in. This would normally be done with a really fine paintbrush, but I find it's actually easier if you use the squirt bottle because you can draw really fine lines and it doesn't run out like a paintbrush does. And you lightly squeeze the bottle, and that's going to make a little bead of color come out of the tip. And you can draw back in some details in your line drawing. Right now it's kind of like shadows. So she's going back in and drawing the arms and putting the eye or the pupil with the little squirt bottle. Again, if you mess up with the squirt bottle because the slip is wet, have like a little paper towel ready or your sponge and just wipe the slip away before it dries and go for it again. This is probably the most fine detail technical work that you're going to be doing. You can see she's wiping with her finger there. So it's really easy just to redo what you did before with a little bit of like a small tip of the sponge. When she's doing this process, occasionally what will happen is if you push down the metal tip too hard on the clay as you're dragging it forward or backwards, it can clog. So if you have your pin tool ready, you can kind of clear that with the tip of your pin tool, or if you have like a sewing needle, it'll clear at that little tip. Or you can have like a sponge or a little something you can just squeeze firmly in the bottle, and usually enough pressure with squeezing will clear that tip. If you are working with the squeeze bottle, the slip trailer is what it's called, and it clogs and you get frustrated and you just squeeze harder because you want a little bit to come out, you could shoot a giant squirt or a blob across the entire side of the pot, which would not look great, and it's kind of a mess to clean up. So you can see with my dog there, who's kind of like the general there with a pot on its head and a whisk. Kind of stupid looking, but that's our dog Peanut, and she basically did some lines in the whisk to give it a handle, top of the pot, a little hand, some movement on the shield, and all those little things above are our baby chicks we just got during this quarantine that we're going through, and she's just adding some details to the wings and little parts just to make them have a little bit more detail. So as she's doing this, obviously when she rotates the pot, this little line of slip will want to dry before she rotates it onto that side. So when you're doing this, you might only do one side, let it dry for 3 or 4 minutes, and then rotate it again. Because if it's wet, you could obviously smear it, but the little line of slip that comes from the bottle does dry pretty quick. So just make sure that you don't squeeze too hard, and it might take a little bit of practice to learn how to use the squeeze bottle because you kind of have to draw as you normally draw with a pencil, but you have to squeeze it as you move, and the more pressure, the faster it comes out, which means the faster you can move. So there is a relationship between the pressure that you squeeze at and the speed that you move the tip at. Best is to hold it slightly above, barely touching the pot as you squeeze it, but it will take some practice. So every once in a while you want to kind of squeeze out onto a piece of paper. You can see that piece of paper that she just moved, and there's some lines of slip on it. That's just practicing using the slip, and every once in a while you'll clear that slip. You don't have to only paint with the slip over the scratch marks. You could also do the same thing over the top of the already colored slip. So you could use this black to make patterns just right over the top of the red without having to carve it first. That would be up to you. Okay, so now that the pot is done carved, she's going to show you kind of the finished product of the carving. So you can see the animals were first carved out and then all the parts were slip trailed back in. You can see the chicken riding like a radio flyer wagon like a chariot. And one of our dogs shooting baby chicks out of a cannon at the full-grown chickens, with the general being a dog and the other chickens carrying like a broom and a pitchfork in a battle scene. So it's definitely a stupid drawing. If she wanted, she could have carved that top part of the pot, but after 2 hours of carving, she was definitely done. I went ahead and used some slip and did some slip design on the handles. So when you see the finished pot, you'll see those. And you can see that like the goats are carved as like a little chariot race. So that is the carving for the pot. I hope you enjoyed watching parts of this video at least. I doubt many of you watched the whole 36 minutes, but thanks for watching.